So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the webinar series Lessons from Esplanada. The series was designed to bring insights from Brazilian foreign ministers about policymaking in the income decade of 2020-2030. I'm Fernanda Ferreira, a master's student in the Sustainability Management program at the Earth Institute, Columbia University, and also a member of Brazil Talk team, which I'm honored to be representing today. Brazil Talk is a global platform for in-depth discussions about Brazilian affairs from Columbia University. I would like to give a shout out to our team, which is led by our Executive Secretary, Julia Diaz, and include other members, graduate students at Columbia, as Renata Penalva, Gabriela Silvestrini, Paulo Speroni, Sam Stenbeck, and Julia Leite. Our member, Pedro Formitag, from the International Schools of Public Affairs, will join me today for the discussion. I would also like to thank our two long partners for making this event possible: the Institute of Latin American Studies at Columbia University and the Lemann Foundation. This event is part of the Brazil on Campus program, which is a student engagement program exclusive to Brazilian students at Columbia, Harvard, MIT, Oxford, and Stanford, with the support of the Lemann Foundation. In addition to events like the one we have today, participants from Brazil on Campus will also be able to apply for the Lemann Foundation Leaders Network after graduation. Be part of it. If you haven't yet signed up, we will share the link for the program with you after the event today. Today we are going to discuss challenges and opportunities for a Brazilian climate agenda. In Brazil, official deforestation rates have been breaking historical records in last year. Brazilian emissions in 2019, captained by illegal deforestation, placed the country in the 6th position among the world's biggest climate polluters. This reflects both the abandonment of national legislation targets and international agreements and a weakening of institutions that could contain the destruction of the forest. Still, the force of public opinion seems to go in the opposite direction of non-decision making. According to the latest polls released by the National Confederation of Industry, more than 90% of Brazilians say they are somewhat concerned about the environment. It resounds the idea that the ultimate goal of protecting the environment shall indeed be placed above political ideologies. In addition, the climate agenda is no longer only environmental. It also embraces social justice and is a potential driver of economic development. The complexity of the largest rainforest in the world, which is home to more than 30 million people, results in a critical environmental justice concern. In the wake of the US elections, Joe Biden's presidency will potentially send an important sign on the global stage that science and facts of climate change continue to become more difficult to de-emphasize or even refute. Brazil is a critical player in facing the climate crisis. There is still time for our country to rediscover how strategic the sustainability agenda is for our economy, for our culture, and for our people. To guide us in the discussion and share her expertise, I'm honored to introduce our eminent guest speaker today, the former Brazil Environmental Minister, Izabella Teixeira. Ms. Teixeira was Minister of the Environment between 2010 and 2016, and Deputy Minister of Environment between 2008 and 2010. As a career public servant, Ms. Teixeira has held a position at the Brazilian Institute for the Environment and Natural Research since 1984. She has also had several high-level management and advisory positions as task leader of the National Environmental Program with the World Bank and the Pantanal Wetlands Program with the Inter-American Development Bank. Ms. Teixeira's guidance and leadership was instrumental in the approval of the new forest code in the National Congress in 2012, which achieved the lowest historical deforestation rates in the Amazon. She structured a comprehensive national policy on climate change, engaging with key economic sectors as energy, agriculture, and industry. In the international stage, she was a key leader of the UN Rio +20 Conference on Sustainable Development, and then appointed by the UN Secretary General as a member of the high-level panel on the post-2015 development agenda. For her outstanding career, in 2013, she received the United Nations Environmental Programme's Champions of the Earth Award for Policy Leadership. In 2015, Ms. Teixeira was head of the Brazilian delegation on negotiations of the Paris Agreement of the UN Convention on Climate Change. Finally, in 2017, she was elected as co-chair of the International Research Panel. She's a member of the UN DESA Board, senior scholar on climate change and land use of SEBRE, and president of the ACRJ Environmental Council. Ms. Izabella Teixeira will make an introductory speech, which will be followed by questions from the Brazil Talk team. Finally, the minister will answer some questions from the audience. So please, feel free to write down your questions in the Q&A box on Zoom. Minister Izabella Teixeira, thank you very much again for sharing your knowledge and your time with us today. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fernanda. Good afternoon from Brazil. I'd like also to thank you, Julia and Pedro, for joining me today, and it's great that we can have this open dialogue and try to make clear what's happening today in Brazil, considering the global crisis and environment, our challenges, and how our history explain our positions and indeed what have been done the last 37, 40 years, considering environmental policy in a developing economy like Brazil, that's so important, so strategic, not only for the leadership, but also to facilitate that other countries can achieve common targets concerning climate change, biodiversity, and pollution. I know that I have around 20 minutes. I'll try. Everybody that knows me know that I like to speak a lot, so I try to be efficient here, okay, and to manage the time around 20 minutes, 25 minutes, to give a big picture, consider what's happened, what Brazil has considering environmental policies, but more than this, I will try to highlight here some principles or some important values that we assume in our environmental policy in the last 35 or 40 years, as I mentioned before. 3 or 4 important flashes here only to illustrate. Probably you don't know about this. Brazil has had a huge influence on our environmental policies from the United States. When the United States established the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, in 1969, Brazil, after Stockholm 72 conference, Brazil created the first institutional arrangement, first institutional organization on environment that we call the National Secretary on Environment. It was in 1973. And our national environmental policies that was established in 1981 has a huge influence from NEPA, considering impact assessment evaluation and other tools, including the society participation. It's very important to highlight here because part of our history, considering how we develop our public environmental management capacity, it was based on international cooperation, and the United States EPA played an important role along this process, along this journey. It's my first consideration here because probably I know that people don't know about this a lot. My second point, as I mentioned before, in 1972, with the first global conference or summit that the world needs to face to address problems between development and nature and environment that we call Stockholm 1972 is the first global summit about this. Brazil played strategically to address sovereignty issues. So this is very important to highlight here, because if you go into the Stockholm Declaration, you can see the principles, and you can go into the principle 21. If I'm right, I think that's right. That is absolutely full dedicated to sovereignty. So some arguments that today you have from Brazilian authorities, that environmental global agenda, international cooperation, also the sustainable development global agenda is supposed to go against our interests. This is not true, because we have important diplomacy, and this diplomacy addressed solutions in the tasks in 1972, and the same happened in Rio+20 conference. I think that Article 2 or 3 of the Declaration of Rio+20 conference again highlighted the importance of the independence of countries, etc., in such a way that you can manage better global issues, but based on national interests. This is very important to highlight, because environmental policies used to host these principles, okay, as important guidelines to address national interests and also international cooperation. My third point here is to remember that Brazil also has important, in considering our new democracy, the new republic in 1985, we create the first Minister of Environment in Brazil. It was exactly in the first momentum of the first phase of the new democracy in Brazil. And it was fascinating, because we decided, it was the beginning of my career, I remember this very well, and we decided in Brazil to bring urban issues together with environmental concerns. So it was the Minister of Urban Development and Environment. And it's very interesting, because Brazil adopted in our legal framework, in our institutional and political frameworks to address environmental policy, we adopt the social environment concept, or the social environmental approach. What it means? We are looking forward to bring together social issues with ecological or environmental issues. This is a big challenge for a huge country like Brazil, that has different realities, from Amazonia to the south of the country, with a powerful, so powerful, because we have the diversity of natural resources, of biomes, etc., etc. So it's something very important to observe, because we used to bring these issues together, okay? Another point that I'd like to remember here, that in 1988, we have a crisis almost the same that we have today, consider deforestation and fires in Amazonia. And this is very important to be highlighted, because this was a crucial decision. I remember that by the federal government, for the Brazilian government. I remember that the first reaction of the government was to go against us and to neglect the reality, and used to say that the international interests used to go against our national interests. This is our sovereignty issue. This is something that Brazil can manage, etc., etc. It's almost the same. That's what's happened today. Today, I think that's worst. But the crisis, the nature crisis in 1988 was worse, because the data about deforestation really is impressive, and the scientists wish to put pressure on us, considering this, on us in Brazilian society. And I remember that we have a famous cover of Time magazine. If you have interest, you can go there. It's very interesting to have this cover, and to have Amazonia on fire, okay? It was 1988. So Brazilian government, meaning the Brazilian diplomacy, took an important decision. What was this? We took a decision to host Rio '92 conference. We took a decision to open the country for international communities to discuss with us not only the global problems, but also solutions for Brazil. And it was the beginning of PPG7, okay, the first most important international program on cooperation for tropical forestry in Brazil. And also you have, for example, other international cooperation like the Guanabara Bay program for the pollution that was negotiated during this conference. And also it was a momentum that developed countries promoted the creation of the Global Environmental Facility. okay, exactly to address the pressure on biodiversity loss. And Brazil was part of all of this. Brazil really managed, and not only our diplomacy, our scientists, we from the environmental constituency, et cetera, we work hard because we understood that sustainability and environment means for us as an asset for our expression of a soft power as international community. And we adopt an important position because we took a decision that about Brazil, who knows about Brazil, who better know about Brazil is Brazil. So, so it was a really important choice because we took a decision to be aligned with the future, not with the past. And this is very important politically because this is an important guideline that support us and to guide us along the last 30 years or 35 years. Another point that I'd like to highlight here is about how innovative Brazil used to be considering new tools, for example, like REDD+. Brazil, before we have a REDD+ formalized, considered global climate change convention, we were fully dedicated to find ways to understand how we could apply this. And Brazil convinced other countries to have REDD+ as an important tool under UNFCCC, the Convention on Climate Change. It's very important. And a good example for this is that we negotiate Amazon Fund. And Amazon Fund is exactly the first concrete tool or concrete example of REDD+ in practice. It's fascinating how we combine our national policy, environmental policy, and also international tools, in that you can add value for our performance, but also to bring other partners together. For example, strengthening South-South cooperation. That's part of the role of Amazon Fund. Until 20% of Amazon Fund is supposed to be dedicated to finance South-South cooperation. Brazil signed this, okay? So I'm giving here some highlights, some flash, exactly to illustrate how indeed we step by step build up political policies or public policies in Brazil, and how we share our outcomes, our knowledge, and how we bring different sectors, economic ones, scientific ones, social ones, together to manage solutions considering problems associated to environmental degradation, okay? Also, we cannot forget that in 2009, when we have the COP of Copenhagen, that was a political disaster, okay, that everybody waits. Everybody was waiting for a concrete outcome to have a global agreement on climate change. It was a big disaster. But Brazil, China, South Africa, and India, we create BASIC group, okay? This is an important group that brings together scientists from the 4 countries and also the negotiations to find a consensus under the umbrella of emerging economies. It was very important. The BASIC group play an important role to achieve Paris Agreement. Okay, it's very interesting how we as emerging economies were able to create these innovative political rooms or political space to dialogue, to understand, and to promote convergence of interest. And this is very important when you go into negotiation, but it's also very important when you go to implement agreements, because to implement agreement, we need action. For action, we need to be together, because of course, it's not only what's happening in Brazil. Climate change is something that we need to address together, okay? And finally, I'd like to remember before Paris Agreement that we have the Rio +20 conference, as you mentioned, and Brazil also addressed and proposed Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030, et cetera. Brazil was able to manage better biodiversity issues when we achieved the agreement of Nagoya Protocol in 2010. This is the basis for bioeconomy, for example, okay? It was, I used to say that it was the lost agreement. Nobody believed that we were able to achieve this, and you went there, you managed, and it was able to build the consensus. So everything that, and also Paris Agreement, that before or along 2015, we established bilateral cooperation between Brazil and China on the climate change, consider climate change, Brazil and United States with President Obama, and Brazil and Germany, and Brazil and Norway in Paris when you signed the second phase of Amazon Fund. It was a strategy, a political and economic and geopolitical strategy to bring our traditional partners closer to us, okay, in an affirmative way to lead or to manage climate change, considering our interest to achieve or to reach the agreement. So all these things means that environmental policy in Brazil is not necessarily only related to environmentalists. Environmental policy in Brazil means that it's an important asset for sustainable development, and climate change is an issue for development. We're discussing geopolitics and also geoeconomics, considering development, global development. So in Brazil, fully understand this, okay? And they used to bring things together. And I used to have to say that we need to pray for non-converted people. It's not only the environmentalists, our constituents. We need to go beyond this. We need to bring the economic sector, social sector, understand better how to connect things in such a way that we can convince people that they are in charge and responsible to address solutions. They are not only victims. We cannot play climate change based on fear and only based on vulnerability. We need to understand how to bring people, not to reach only rich people, but to bring people together in such a way that you can move on with robust and permanent solutions. Why? Because you don't have a planet B, it's true, but why? We cannot wait for the damage that climate change, the scenarios of damage that climate change supposed to bring to us, because COVID-19 today shows to us what a global crisis means, okay? And all the scenarios on climate change, they say that the crisis will be worst. So it's absolutely important that you can understand that we are connected, and these connections, I hope, that can provoke us to be innovative, creative, and that we can play together, not to be polarized, okay? This is something that doesn't make sense in this century. We learn a lot last century. We understand the responsibilities, the common responsibilities that we have today, but we cannot forget that we have the past. But we understand that this century, we are responsible not only to cut emissions, consider mitigation agenda, but we are responsible to promote adaptation and resilience in such a way that we can have a fair development, meaning for developing and emerging economies. It's absolutely important to understand social vulnerabilities and risks and how we manage this, consider the global umbrella that climate change will drive, or right now is driving today. What it is driving today, okay? So this is a big picture considering international scenarios. Of course, that we have another information, another data. If anyone would like to know about this, please ask me. But to highlight two things, three things, another three things. Building blocks of national environmental policy in Brazil. Brazil used to have three pillars, okay? Consider the building blocks of our national policy. First one, science. Our policies are science and policy oriented. Okay, it's very important. Since the beginning, you have science as a partner. Okay, so if you have a really important legal framework on environmental legal framework, you have a really important independent institution like public prosecutors, if you have a really important environmental law in Brazil and also the judiciary institutions, etc., be sure that science is behind the scenes, okay? So it's impossible to understand Brazilian policies, environmental policy, without bringing scientific knowledge as part of this. Even if you go to urban areas, for example, pollution, air pollution, etc., you have national programs to reduce emissions, etc., also technology for car fleets, etc. This is based on science. This is the first point. The second pillar, it's very interesting, that is based on open dialogue with the society. It's fascinating because the civil society, even during the dictatorship, when we created the first institution, as I mentioned, SEMA, it was in 1973, it was during the worst period of dictatorship in our country, okay? And the militaries created the environmental institution. Why? They are not, I'm convinced that the former President Médici was not a communist, okay? And so they understood the importance to dialogue and to understand or to have a performance to consider environmental concerns that were emerging, were coming from in the world as something critical. This is 70s, okay? I was 97 years old. Come on, 9. Okay, so it's unbelievable. Since the beginning, you have the Brazilian society closer, the private sector closer. The National Environmental Council in Brazil used to be an open political space to debate with the diversity of stakeholders in Brazil. This means democracy. And this was created before the new republic, before our new democracy. So it's very important that along the history, you always have the civil society with all the diversity, all the contradictions, et cetera, as a partner, okay? It's very important to highlight this. And the third pillar was exactly international cooperation. Okay, it's impossible when I look back the past and remember this history and all the moments of my career. I remember that international cooperation was really closer to Brazil. The different international cooperation, bilateral one, multilateral one, financial ones, we have different arrangements of international cooperation that Brazil used and adopted to play national, regionally, and internationally. So it's very important to highlight because today, these 3 pillars, they are in checkmate, okay? And this, I think that illustrates very well the difficulties that we have today in Brazil to manage with transparency, with political engagement, with commitments, and also trying to dialogue with the future, what is happening today in Brazilian policies, environmental policies, okay? It's not necessarily only that you have people that are destroying in culture's expression or have a process of fragmentation of institutional and our environmental governance in Brazil, institutional arrangements in environmental governance. It's more than this. The philosophy of the philosophy that support the political arrangements and also the history, this is in checkmate, okay? And so that's why I mentioned the 3 building blocks that it is, if you go around the world, you can check this. We have in other countries the same approach, okay? And that's why it's very important to understand in the future how you can manage better science, how you can manage better the new ways to bring society together, and how we can reframe and reshape our international cooperation framework and how indeed Brazil wants to be into the world. What's the insertion that we want to be, that we want to have into the world. This is something critical to be better explained. As I mentioned before, Brazil took a decision to have this global leadership or to have a history based on this exactly because environmental policies and environmental protection means soft power for Brazil. Second, that absolutely important for a country that still have problems with social inequalities, and absolutely important that you can bring environmental concerns, environmental policies, the green movements to promote solutions. For example, low carbon jobs. Okay, we need to understand better how to address local needs on developing economies with different inequalities at the subnational levels, how we can address global needs local needs vis-a-vis global challenges like biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. Global pollution. Brazil is part of this. What we need to change is you want to be part of the side of the equation that are the drivers, the cause, the problems, or we are the side of the equation that are the solutions. Okay, and this is what I assume today, that you have this backsliding in Brazil. It's not only a setback, it's a backsliding because you have the roots, you have the pathways, you have diverse alternatives, you have trade-offs. It's important to highlight because you have alternatives, but politically, what you have today in Brazil, in my opinion, it's a backsliding, okay? We are going back to the past in the worst way that you can choose. This is something impressive for us because the concrete outcomes or results that come from the government today, they are not good. We have the raise of the deforestation rates in Brazil, okay, in a way that I cannot explain. Brazil has all the conditions to tackle the illegal deforestation. We learned a lot in the last 30 years. We built robust systems through environmental enforcement. This is for me a non-issue because you know how to do the things. Okay, not necessarily is the militaries. The militaries used to support us considering logistics, not to go against the environmental crime. These are the environmental institutions with strategic partnership and alliance with other institutions in Brazil, like that are responsible, in charge to face or to tackle crime. When you discuss illegal deforestation in Brazil, you also need to discuss animal trafficking. We also need to discuss illegal gold mining. This means also in Brazil, environmental crime, and this is part of organized crime arrangements that we need to face or need to tackle. So we have institutions in Brazil that knows how to manage this, the civil institutions, and the militaries never were dedicated to go against this at the front line. They are always behind us, behind the scenes, support us when we need support to consider our frontiers, etc., because you have our constitutional rules, and this is part of the constitutional rules. Okay, so we learn a lot with that, consider our performance. We learn a lot with our scientific institutions. We learn a lot with our political democracy process, with National Congress and the Ministério Público and the Federal Public Prosecutor. We learn a lot with our judiciary. So come on. And also the civil society, as you explained before, in Brazil, supports that we need to tackle climate change and need to end the deforestation in Amazonia. We have the political support from the Brazilian society. So it doesn't make sense for me that Brazil today shows again huge numbers on considered rates of deforestation. What's happening next year? Because we have a trend that the rate was raising. Okay, but this is when you go against crime, organized crime, it's very difficult to manage, but never to double the rate, okay? And when in 2018, at the end of the last government, President Temer, you have a rate around 70,000 square kilometers. The first year of the actual government in Brazil, you have 10,000 of square kilometers. And the projections for this year, it's around 14,000 square kilometers. This means that in 2 years, you will almost double the rate that you have in 2018. This is unacceptable because Brazil learned how to tackle this, and Brazil learn how to move beyond this. What are the consequences? It's a good example. If we go into the climate change agenda, that we need to mitigate emissions, almost today, as you mentioned, 48% of our annual emissions are fully dedicated related to land use / deforestation. So we have emissions, carbon emissions related to illegal economic activities. Does it make sense? Almost 50% of our emissions. So you have two phases. You have to go against this carbon, that's illegal carbon for the atmosphere is carbon, okay? And without no social and economic benefits. It's very important to highlight this because you have, it comes from crime, so it's informal economy, informal, illegal social pressure, etc., okay? Not fair jobs, etc. So it's an official world. It's something that we need to go there and close and tackle and eliminate. And you have around 55% of our emissions that are the formal ones from our economy that you need to address solutions. And you have solutions for this because in energy, Brazil has an energy mix balance between renewable and non-renewable. It's almost 50-50. So Brazil in the electric mix is more than 85% based on renewable, okay? And Brazil can replace, even for fossil fuels, for example, coal, you can use natural gas, etc., etc. You have alternative, or can go into the renewable, more in renewable, consider not only wind, that's the most important electric power today, source generation in Brazil, it's wind power today. And you have hydropower, you have solar, you have biomass, it's very important. So Brazil has alternatives, even for going into hydrogen world. I know that's expensive, but Brazil has technologies to manage green hydrogen based on renewable energy. So you have alternatives. You have biofuels, you can manage this, and also you can go into the energy efficiency, and you can go into arrangements that can bring win-win solution consider carbon challenges. Also in agriculture, Brazil has a tropical agriculture, a really competitive agriculture. 45 years ago, Brazil used to import food, okay? And now we are one of the most important food producers around the world. And we need to understand what will be the deliveries that Brazilian agriculture will do in 2030, 2040, 2050, considering nature conservation and consider climate change. You have low carbon agriculture technologies, we can manage this, we can do this. In Amazonia, you don't have the crops, only soya that is the border of Amazonia biome, but you have moratorium of soya. And the cattle range, it's a big challenge because we need to have supply chains and also traceability. And the private sector assume the commitments now. So we have solutions. What I cannot understand, why Brazil doesn't bring this as an asset and go faster into these solutions, because low carbon economy in Brazil will make Brazil more competitive. All this, okay? We are a country that we are not losing anything considered go into the low carbon world. Okay, of course, that to have trade-offs and transitions, and you need to understand who will be the losers, the old ones that we need to support to transform, or to have a phasing out for this, for these industries or for these players, but not to block and go back to the past. Exactly the opposite. And you have today this momentum in Brazil that you have a private sector, finance banks, everybody together looking to go into the green world, okay, to understand better how Brazil can manage this, and giving a clear message to the government that what's happening today in Brazil, this is not sustainable. It's not also what Brazil understands that is very important for us. I hope that we can manage this better in short-term perspective. Of course, that to have a political damage, this is really critical. But I used to be an optimist, but also a pragmatic woman. We have alternatives, but to do this, we need to be together, and we need to value democracy, and to fight against the setbacks and also the backsliding. More than this, showing that Brazil assume really good targets, review our NDC. Our NDC, when we prepared this, it was the more ambitious NDC in the world. It's a developing country that proposed NDC based on inventories, as the same of developed countries. Okay, it was the only developing country that proposed NDC, not based on projections. Okay, it's a concrete data. So we were really ambitious, and I hope that we can be back on the floor in such a way that we can not achieve solutions for us, but we can share our technologies, our solutions, and bring social issues in an important visibility in such a way that we can be more fair in our development. This is a unique opportunity in the world. I think that to have really good options and to dialogue better with the past that the past bring to us. And so connectivity, it's absolutely important. How we connect issues, it's absolutely important to move on. So it's a big picture. I don't know about the time, but I think it's better to go to your questions, and I can illustrate and say more about my perspectives and my experience. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Minister Izabella, for this insightful talk, bringing solutions, strategies, and also the building blocks for policies that you talked about. So I'll move on now for the first question for the Brazilian Talk team. So in the past year, the Brazil Talk team has organized different events and interviews around Amazon deforestation and indigenous rights. On 2 occasions, Marina Silva, also Brazil former Minister of Environment, and Ricardo Galvão, former Director of the National Institute for Space Research, reinforced the fact that there is no doubt that Brazil has sovereignty over the Brazilian Amazon. However, they also brought the idea that the forest's existence is a global responsibility, and keeping the forest alive is a matter of humanity. So first, I'd like you to talk if you agree with this idea, and if you can please expand more on the nature of the deforestation records that you see in Brazil nowadays. And finally, considering indigenous people's role in protecting the forests, in your vision, how important is it to secure indigenous people's land rights and welcome solutions that comes from the indigenous people?
Well, okay, I will consider the second question and move back to the first one, okay? Because during my introduction, I spoke about deforestation in Amazonia. I will try to add some comments about Amazonia at the end. Indigenous people, this is a constitutional right, okay? The first thing, it's absolutely important to observe that this is indigenous lands, and this means a constitutional right. So it's the law in Brazil. Okay, if you go against this, we are going against the Constitution. This is very important to be highlighted here because we have a democracy and you have a law that guide us. Okay, and this is something very important to be observed. The second one, we cannot forget what you have today in Brazil considering indigenous population, indigenous people. You have indigenous people in Amazonia, you have indigenous people in other regions in Brazil. The conflicts that we have today concerning lands is almost, we have some ones in other regions in Brazil, but the critical ones are today related to Amazonia and to public lands. Okay, Brazil has more than around 60 millions of hectares of public lands in Amazonia that must have a destination. Okay, and the government has responsibility to establish rules and procedures and criteria to promote the land destination. And we need to recognize the indigenous people rights as one of the important criteria to promote the public land destination in Brazil. And you have some conflicts considering this principle, if I can use this word, because you have some interests from some farmers or some political interests in the Amazon region that they don't want to add or to give more lands for indigenous people. So it's the same when you discuss preserved areas or protect areas like national parks for environmental protection. And also it's the same when you discuss, for example, human settlements considering small farmers and in consolidated areas. Okay, or a traditional population, not only indigenous, but traditional communities like people that live in the forest, but they are not indigenous, okay, ones. So we cannot forget that in Amazonia is a new universe. Okay, we have more than 100. I think that 108 is, I'm not wrong, but I think there's different ethnicities or unknown people, that the indigenous people that lives in Amazonia, unknown. So probably more than 100 ethnicities that we don't know anything about. It's like a new world. It's so fascinating. We have more in Amazonia, indigenous people, they speak more than 240 languages, not dialects, languages. It's more than 9 nations. Okay, it's unbelievable how well rich Brazil is. Okay, and our cultural diversity, how important this population, these people are. Sorry, how important they know a lot about our history as a country, as a civilization that we don't know. Okay, so Brazil and Brazilians, we must learn the importance of these people that are there, okay, and not only to consider that to come from Europeans, for example, or Americans. Okay, it's only good to remember that when the first Portuguese came to Brazil in the 15th, the first European women arrived here 6 to 8 years later. Okay, during more than 50 years, the indigenous women were responsible for our society. So we have common origins as a society with indigenous peoples. So we need to respect our history. You need to respect our origin, okay? And that's why Brazil, it's so important to respect migrations and different cultures, because we are structured exactly as a society based on this diversity, and we cannot neglect this. So I'm sometimes feel completely astonished when I see some political reactions based on the ignorance and based on guidance. That doesn't make sense for me. It really doesn't make sense, because Brazil is not this. So first thing, indigenous people, they have traditional knowledge, they have constitutional rights, they are absolutely important for Amazonia preservation. They are absolutely important for policy, environmental conservation. They are important to learn, to teach us how to have a better relationship with nature. COVID is a good example of how we need to learn to see better nature. And also they are very important for us if you want to have a future, because they are there, okay? And we are so new in this process, okay? And they are there in more than 30,000 years as people. So as a civilization, this is the word that I'm looking for. So it's very important that you can understand the dynamics, the problems, and if you need to renew our governance, to public governance, to manage better the indigenous people, but you cannot go against their rights, and you cannot go against their political values. And they are so important to preserve the forest, okay? So this is indigenous people, where I say, I like to remember that we established a national policy on environment and environmental management in indigenous lands. It's called PENEGATI. It was well succeed public policy, also to prevent fires. It's very interesting, and to manage traditional knowledge, and also absolutely important for bioeconomy. So it's sometimes you need to understand this contradiction. We have some authorities in Brazil that like to say Brazil is going to promote bioeconomy, but these people forget that part of the bioeconomy is exactly based on indigenous people knowledge. So we need to make clear the connections. That's why, as I'm used to say, the connectivity is a key issue for the century, because we need to understand how we are connected and how we impact people and how the people impact us. So something important. Consider deforestation, as you say, Amazonia, or Amazon, sorry. Amazon is a wicked problem. This is something very important to be highlighted here, because you have conflict narratives, you have different situations. You have, to simplify, you have around, I think, 4 different Amazonia. You have an Amazonia that the forested areas is consolidated, sorry, and people are there more than 40 years, okay, and you need to bring solutions. It's absolutely important. You have a mobile frontier on deforestation today that you need to go against, you need to stop, okay, because this is going into the primary forest, and this provokes degradation and forest fragmentation, okay. You have a full forest, full Amazon forest preserved, where you have indigenous people and traditional communities. You have poverty, but you don't have misery. This is very important. And you have a urban Amazonia. Amazonia in Brazil has around 25 million people that live there, okay? And 80% of this population lives in cities, okay? And so we need to understand the role of the urban dynamics, urban areas in Amazonia, and how the lifestyles and how we provide services, how indeed we we'd like to establish sustainable development in such a way that protection and production makes sense to the cities in Amazonia. And you have important activities, economic activities like mining, that you have mining, the legal and the industry, with really high perform, and another one you have illegal mining, consider gold illegal mining. So these contradictions, they are very important to be understood and to know more how to manage and what you need to conciliate, how you can conciliate with preservation, and what you need to stop and to restore a degraded area. Okay, and this is a vision that Amazonia needs in such a way that you can tackle or face the problems, the concrete problems that Amazonia has today. It's not only the environmental degradation, deforestation. It's also the lowest rates of human development index in Brazil, they are in Amazonia. Okay, the richest region in Amazonia is the poorest one considered human development. It's unbelievable. GDP, Brazil GDP, Amazonia is responsible only around 12%. Okay, they are concrete numbers. We need to understand why. But Amazonia is the region of Brazil that has alternatives to dialogue with the future. Okay, and to propose the new ways. So we need to understand how we will build our interests, national interests. What is the role of Amazonia in the journey of Brazil's national interests? How indeed we understand the diverse situations and how Amazonians, people that live in Amazonia, call Amazonians, how they want, what is the solution that they want, okay, what they need. The voice must come from the forest, not from the south of the country. This is very important, okay? And this is a big challenge. Why it's a big challenge? Because Brazil in the past destroyed one forest. It was Atlantic forest. You cannot forget it, okay? And we have less than 10% of a tropical forest that we have along the coast that was destroyed. Consider our colonization and our urbanization process. Okay, go to Amazonia, we need to understand how we can indeed promote development based on conservation. It's a new way to see the nature, and a new way, not only for the new economies, etc., but how we can retrofit the old industry and make this sustainable. We can do this, okay? But for this, we need to have an open dialogue, and we need to bring people together. If not, okay, you have polarized situation that you have today, where everybody dreams to have the reason and nobody has the reason. This is the real politics today, unfortunately, in Brazil.
Well, Minister, thank you so much for these insights. I mean, there's so many things we'd like to hear more from you about, but I'll try to stick to one question at a time. We would like to ask you about, would like to expand about how the Joe Biden administration, in your opinion, might impact the Brazilian climate agenda, especially considering 2 points. First, in terms of the factors, which factors isolate Brazil from the rest of the world on the climate agenda, is in spite of the, like you mentioned, the country's historical leadership on the environmental issues. As we speak, countries like China, Japan, South Korea have been announcing net zero targets, and the future Biden administration aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. So from this first standpoint, at the same time, from a second standpoint, what is the current state of the Brazilian NDC targets, and what would be your perspectives for the national policy on climate change that ends this year of 2020? Thank you. Just before you answer, Minister, just if any of our guests are interested in asking questions, just, we have already some questions from the audience. Just hit the button on the bottom of your screen for Q&A. Thank you. Please, Minister.
Okay, let's go. I think that we need another webinar, but Okay, Joe Biden, the President Joe Biden, he was part of the strategy that President Obama adopted exactly to achieve Paris Agreement. Okay, and Brazil also, as I mentioned before, you have this bilateral arrangement, and the United States was part of these bilateral arrangements as part of our strategy to be together and to work closer with the French diplomacy and French government, and also with China. So we have three important players consider the challenges to cut emissions in the world in short-term perspectives. Okay, you have, of course, United States, China, that's the big emitter in the world, and also European Union. Okay, one of the scenarios that I have been discussing, and people used to consider that the United States will try to be back, consider the leadership. It's very important, okay, considering what President Trump managed the last 4 years, and also you have domestic problems and international consequences. So it's very important that the United States can be back. And more than this, what is the ambition for President Biden to qualify or requalify United States leadership? This is a different momentum when you compare to Paris. Okay, all the geopolitical conditions that lead us to achieve Paris Agreement in 2015, these geopolitical conditions today don't exist anymore. Okay, don't forget it that in 2015 you have UK together with Europe. Today you have Brexit. Don't forget it that you didn't have a polarized situation as we have today between China and the United States. It's not only considered the governments, it's also the feelings from the societies. It's very important to understand this. You didn't have in 2015 the highlighted the role of subnational players. Today you have this, and you didn't have in 2015 Brazil in this situation, and we have Brazil in this situation. Australia also, remember this, and my feeling is that if United States will be back, he will be back, consider these new conditions in the world. That means that we need to go faster. Probably COVID-19 is, in my opinion, not a disruptive, but will accelerate things. Okay, not a disruptive factor, but probably will accelerate things. But we need to face some challenge, for example, with low cost of oil and gas today in the world because of the economic crisis provoked by COVID, how we go to finance renewable energy or the new energy. But on the other side, probably you can eliminate the subsidies for oil and gas industry. Okay, these are the contradictions that we have today. We need to understand, for example, that the United States promoted this energy independence based on fracking. Okay, shale gas and fracking, and what is the future of this considered climate change? So I think that it's a good news the United States be back, in my opinion. Second, it's a good news the United States to understand how to manage domestic measures or domestic situations, because you have American society and you have the Democrats and you have the left wing of Democrats. You have some demands, very important domestic ones, that must be addressed, and that the impact of this, consider the ambition of climate change. If you have the second task, that how United States will review its NDC, okay, because you have this exercise, international exercise, that have under the guidance of the Secretary General to raise ambition, and this means that you need to review NDCs, and how President Biden will manage this. Step by step, slow pace, understanding better the consequences, manage better the national situations, negotiating better with other partner, international partner that have this dialogue fragmented, consider Trump administration. We have some important things that must be discussed and understood considering the future. And the third one, what leadership, what American leadership will means indeed considering the challenge of the next 10 years. And this is very important. So a second thing that, as you mentioned, we cannot forget that you have other players coming. You have South Korea, you have Japan, even Japan that used to be the more conservative player of developed economies assume net zero emission. This means that you have some pathways. China assumed 2060. What it means, the limit, what it is, it's a limit for developing economies, for example, okay? And 2050 is the limit for developed economies, what it is. But what's critical is today, if you check the numbers, you can see that the European countries and as Brazil, we are not achieved our goals, our targets on national climate change policies. This is absolutely true. Okay, Brazil is supposed not to be, internationally, you're not obligated to change it, but nationally, this is a national law. And unfortunately, because of the Bolsonaro government performance, we will have the setbacks, okay? The scientists are discussing this today in Brazil. Let's see the final rate, the final number, the final rate of deforestation in Brazil this year to say, okay, this is true or not. But it means that all the efforts that have been done the last 10 years during my term, it's over. They are over, okay? Because indeed, I lost the game. This is the meaning, okay? And we cannot also forget that I think that it's very important is what are the national interests or regional interests that will be addressing the pathways to achieve net zero emissions, okay? Because we have decision processes that are happening today. And then how this process will influence our interests. For example, how Amazonia will be impacted for these decisions for consider the United States and the European Union, for example. How our interests can indeed be part of this or not. How Amazonia, solution for Amazonia, you used to see Amazonia based on the problem. Let's think in another way. If Brazil took a decision to preserve Amazonia, how this will influence the international interest for net zero emissions. This is some questions that are very important to be discussed because yes, last year I went to Princeton University to a seminar that we discussed a modeling showing what will happen to Amazonia and to the world if you cut 40% or 50% of Amazon forest in Brazil, okay? And I remember that it's impressive, it's really an excellent scientific study. And it's impressive how you have the temperature in California will rise, okay? I remember this is hot, and hot red, so I can use the expression like, what is this? And of course, Brazil, agriculture in Brazil will collapse, consider the savanization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And have other regions around the world. And I asked for the scientists to develop another study. Can you please develop a modeling showing that if Brazil took a decision to preserve Amazonia, okay, to stop in 8% of the forest and restore plus 10%, let's think that the next 30 years we're able to restore 10% of the plus 10% of the original areas of Amazon forest, okay? What will be the consequence? And how indeed will affect atmosphere positively or not? And this clear example how the political game must be evolved and must be approached. And that's why I used to mention that science is absolutely important. Considering our Brazilian NDC targets, this is a bad news in my opinion, okay, unfortunately. As you know, the Brazilian government today, they reviewed the climate governance that we have in Brazil. And one of the guidelines, they don't discuss with civil society. So we don't have access for the numbers, only for consider the media and other institutions that go there, and then also private sector. So you don't have the arrangement that you used to have, institutional arrangement that you used to have, where the government brings everything together and make clear for everybody our challenges, our gains, our failures. Okay, we don't have this today. And what the scientists and the specialists used to say is that our NDC, the government is not showing what's happening, and also will not present or didn't present yet review of the NDC. Okay, but the scientists say that unfortunately, as we're not going to achieve our targets on the national climate policy until 2020 that we established when we came back from Copenhagen, okay, the last decade. We don't know, we need to check this number and to know the impacts of the commitments considering Brazilian DC. What I know is that Brazil has additional investments in low carbon agriculture, that we have private sector and subnational players moving forward, okay? I know that we have this big debate today, consider energy scenarios in Brazil, energy sector with natural gas together with renewable energy. And again, a new debate about hydropower again, okay, and biomass. And the proposal of National Energy Plan for 2050 is exactly to not establish a carbon target. This is a decision from the government, okay? This is an open target in such a way that the market can take decision, or can take decision, sorry. So this can take decision, sorry. This is what we have today. So we don't have a coordinated action that with transparency. I'm not saying that if the government is doing this, I'm so sorry, nobody in the society knows about this, okay? But considering the political speech and also political positions from Brazilian authorities, what we know is that they are convinced that Brazil implemented the Brazil NDCs and that we don't need to review anything. Okay, and we have the rate of deforestation raising. And so even in our NDC, when we established the umbrella of deforestation that we say until 2030, okay, of course that we want to achieve this early to end deforestation. But as a legal activity, you cannot assume an international commitment if you cannot control all the pieces of the game, okay? But this was a safeguard, but I know that our ambition, it was to end around 2022, 2023, that you can control everything, okay? You had conditions in the past to do this. I'm not sure if we have the conditions or new ones to do this today, consider the future. I do believe, I hope, as a Brazilian, that I can be wrong, okay? I really hope. And I'd like, as you know, I have the lowest rates, and the lowest rate is in my administration. I'd like to lose. This is something that I love, okay, that I have a minister that will come for, oh, you are the past. I will clap my hands, okay? And this is something that I used to say. I don't know how to say this in English, but for me, what's happened today in Brazil is the same that happens in World Cup. It's the new 7-1, okay? We are losing this game, unfortunately. You have all the conditions to win. And probably the same, I'm not a specialist in soccer and football matches, but I know that Brazil used to believe that we have the best team, the best coach, the best stadium, the best tools, the best journalists, and the best people that really believes in Brazil. We used to have the best in Amazonia. What's happening today, the disaster. So it's a new 7-1, in my opinion. We need to take care.
Yeah, well, thank you for this. I think this is the best way to put it, Minister. Very insightful. I would like to ask one more question. I know it's a challenging and hard question, but we have actually a lot of questions from the audience, and they all pretty much point to the same direction, which is about the future. So we would like to hear from you a few. What would be the takeaways from this conversation of ours? What would you indicate as the talking points for the next decade in order to recover or to expand actually the international leadership that we used to have in the climate agenda? I know this is a challenging, hard question. We would like to talk about this for hours, but we don't want to take too much of your time, so we would kindly ask you to make somehow a brief answer, if at all possible. Thank you.
Okay. When you talk about the future, the first thing that you should pay attention is that the future is not a linear projection of the past. Okay, I'm so sorry. As my mom used to say, or my grandmother used to say, that I should become a professor or a lawyer because this means the future. I'm so sorry. Okay, the new professions in the world saying that the future is completely different. This is so. If I believe that I was a rebel because I'm a biologist, the only one, the unique in my family. Everybody, so what is this? And I remember that my family used to say that, okay, if you need our support, financial support, we support you, okay? It's unbelievable how transformative it was in 30 years. What I'm saying is that the future will be transformative, but not in 30 years, in 5 years, in 2 years, in 10 years, because it will be faster. You have the impact of the economy of technologies or innovation, and you have the impact of the economy of knowledge. It's very important to highlight this. The second thing is that, okay, climate change and sustainability. Sustainability is the only answer for the future, okay? We need to understand this, we need to review the concepts, we need to bring things together, as I used to mention, in people, and we need to make clear how we can use sustainability based on our national realities and how we address solutions, okay? The third thing is that, okay, climate change is something that, yes, it's true, I'm here, and we need to live with me. Who is born today will be probably alive 2100, okay? And so pay attention, because time is something that is not something so distant as we used to think in the past. Okay, and I'm saying this because I'm 59 years old, and I hope that more than half of my life I lived in the last century, and more than half of my life I can live in this century. So, and this is something that we need to learn, considering how the world is in the process of reorganize itself, the global order also, the multilateral system also, everything is changing, okay? And in my opinion, it's absolutely important that you can assume climate change as a threat in short-term perspective, but as something really provocative that will make us to move forward in the future, consider new basis of new relationship with the nature, but also understand better the impacts of economy of innovation and how we can use this in a good way, not in the bad way. And we cannot forget that our society will be interconnected, not only physically, but also digital. The digital world will have really high impact, and we need to understand how we can have jobs, face inequalities, etc., 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 based on concrete measures, on concrete lifestyles. At the end, we need to be happy. We want to be happy, okay? We need to understand what it means. And it's not saying that climate change is something that will destroy the world. You need to be optimist, okay? And to put pressure on the guys that must take decision now. This pressure is not only to illustrate that we need to go against financial sector, etc., etc. We have choices. And this is the power of the new citizenship. I believe that we need to value or redefine our democracies. It's very important to pay attention about what's happening around the world, consider democracies, and how climate change is absolutely, to tackle climate change, democracy is absolutely important because it means participation and engagement. And also we need to understand how we can influence multilateral system, the international cooperation system, to host the ambitions of non-state partners or players. Because society, non-state, and other non-state players, they used to be more ambitious than the states. And now the momentum is to implement things, is to act, to put things in practice. Okay, and this means that everybody, if you open open the opportunities, for example, to have a green job in a local place, or in a city, a medium-sized city in a state in Brazil, and this makes sense for the economy, for social, etc. This will become a reality, and you need to understand how this will influence other things. This means, indeed, how we'd like to manage the agenda based on opportunities and solutions, and how we convince people to act together, because their actions will make the difference, consider the global benefits. It's not something that we need only to talk climate language or to speak climate language with the specialists as we used to do, or go to the environment, to multilateral systems, diplomats and the negotiators, etc., and we speak our carbon language. No, we need to adopt new language. We need to come to the cities, to the societies, and to explain how the solution that we are proposing will make sense. Okay, and that's why international cooperation must be reshaped. For example, we have now green recovery trends. Everybody, part of the world is discussing this, but you have more subsidies for the old economy than the green economy. Okay, and so you have transition. How indeed will you understand transition as something that's not to postpone solution, but is to manage new solutions, including the losers. Who are the losers? Who will be out of the game in the next 20 years? We don't need to wait 20 years to find out, in my opinion, okay, because it's there. We need to see the things, okay, and take a decision on how we want to solve this problem. If you have the losers, okay, it's impossible to have an industry based on telephones, not smart mobile, but telephones, okay, fixed one. Okay, it's a phasing out, or you support this industry to be transformed and to play in an innovative way, consider digital economies. I don't know, but we need to discuss this. In Brazil, we have the situation, for example, in a free zone in Manaus, in Amazonia, okay, that will have subsidies for the old industry. What is the new industry that we want? If you can have financial subsidies for bioeconomy, for example, in not only in Manaus, but in other regions around in our country, that is the mega one in biodiversity in the world. So I think that is a momentum, not to discuss again the polos or to discuss the negationism, etc. This is a reality. I can agree or can disagree, but this is a reality. COVID is showing to us. If anyone has any doubt, please, okay, stay at home because it's this. So this is not a moment of doubts. This is a moment to act, okay, and to act based on dialogue and respect people. We need to respect people. People must be convinced and part of. It's not like a mantra or a religion process. No, it's political engagement. Okay, it means that we are looking to transform their lives, and how important it is to promote development. And developing economies and emerging economies have really important commitments and challenges to put in practice or to face. So Brazil, for example, this is very good to illustrate. You have this absolutely powerful agriculture, but you have hunger in Brazil back, okay? And but you have food, but what you have today in Brazil is waste. Part of this related to the gaps on logistics and infrastructure. So how we can finance infrastructure, consider low carbon, have international investments, low carbon technology, blah, 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 but you can have intelligent, smart arrangements that you can increase productivity, because this means new market, etc., agricultural productivity, but this means reduce or minimize waste. And Brazil and agriculture in Brazil assume commitments to go against hunger, not only in our country, but also international. This is a role for private sector. If you want to bring solution, we need to assume commitments. You are co-responsible, okay? And this is very important to understand, why I mentioned green citizenship. It's the same with the bioeconomy in Amazonia, for example. What would be the contribution of bioeconomy, consider Amazonia products, to address better nutrition in the world? Okay, it's a good question. And why? Because we have really good products from the forest, based on acknowledgement, traditional acknowledgement, with new smart model of business, with job generation. But okay, how you are part, not only to preserve Amazonia, but to manage hunger or to end hunger and poverty in the world. This is a good example how things will be connected and how indeed we must be engaged. Engagement, political engagement, economic engagement is more than to use a bike and a organic cotton bag in Central Park. Okay, it's more than this. If we want to manage this in a concrete way, we need to understand that we, as a part of the solution, we must change our behavior and be committed. If not, again, this is the government that is doing this. There are some issues like environmental issues that this is not a government issue. This is a society issue. This is a state issue. So we need to manage this beyond the domestic dispute, political dispute that unfortunately today in Brazil we have to manage. And my feeling is that what is coming in the next 10 years, the next 10 years, that will be absolutely critical. You have in 2022 Stockholm Plus 50 conference. Again, this will be a conference to balance and to act. You have the 200th of our independence in Brazil, but don't forget that you have 100th of Modern Art Week. And probably this is the way that we express a new Brazilian society, our diversity, our happiness, our will to make the difference in a positive way and show that we will be back in the world, be back in the century, and more than this, that we are the leader based on solutions and showing open Brazil, our problems but our solutions, our diversity. We don't have to go behind the walls. We need to go exactly on the floor to say, we are here, and let's do this together. I'm fully convinced that we can do this. I'm absolutely convinced that we can do this. And this is an issue that a supranational issue. This is not a political issue for small groups. This is something that means our freedom, our democracy, our choice, our right of choice, and more than this, solutions for our economic growth and decoupling economic growth for environmental impact. Nature must be preserved as a solution, okay? To promote inclusive sustainable development. This is something we need to readdress or review our formula. We need to understand better how to do this, and we need to dialogue. Without understanding the trade-offs, without understanding the regional challenges in a country like Brazil, what's happening in Amazonia not necessarily will happen in the south of the country. And this is how our country is so beautiful, because we have alternatives and we have diversity. And these are key words, key passwords for this century.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your insightful ideas. So we would like to finalize our talk today. I will bring you one just last brief question for our audience. And the question is, which green investments would you focus for the Brazil agenda in the coming decade? Renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, cleaner transportation, smart digital economy. What would you
everything
if that's possible?
It's an excellent question, but I think that all of them, Brazil must be engaged. But one thing politically would be very important. Climate change is a problem that used to be driven, consider energy agenda, because this is where the developed economies have problem. Okay, the emissions, the carbon emissions based on the sector energy sector, not in Brazil. This is very important. In Brazil, the emissions come from land use. You have deforestation that you need to tackle. This is not a formal activity, okay? And we have agriculture that's so important to food security, food safety, and food sustainability around the world. And we have a tropical agriculture, okay? And also, tropical agriculture means that you can have 2 or sometimes 3 times per year crops, and important for the challenge to food, to go to international markets, is not only for commodities. So if you have a really good strategy, three things should happen. The first one is to add value for agricultural supply chains. And this means value supply chains, how you can bring better resource efficient use, and also how we can have traceability and influence from extraction, distribution, and consumers influence the choice, how people indeed will eat better. Okay, not the quality, not only the quality of the food, but the quality of the process. All the supply chains that you have until you can have the final food for consumption. Okay, this is something very important that you can, what it means, consumers be committed with producers. And this is something very, very important to be highlighted. The second thing that, in my opinion, is that agriculture in Brazil should assume low carbon agriculture as a target, a concrete target. In 10 years or in 15 years, all agriculture in Brazil will be based on low carbon agriculture. What it means? Okay, means that Brazil will have all the technology for this, and means that we'll be able to increase our productivity, be more competitive, okay, without damaging the environment as they used to do. Okay, and you can promote regional development using this. This is absolutely important, and this is part of our NDC. So how we can go beyond the targets and bring this as a mainstream. Low carbon agriculture will become mainstream agriculture in Brazil. This is, for me, absolutely important. And the third one is something that I'd like too much to separate what's happening in Amazonia, that really can upscale the ambition of a cattle range in Amazonia to restore Amazonia, to preserve Amazonia, degraded area, but more than this, that agriculture in Brazil, all the sector, assume the responsibility to avoid Amazonia degradation, political responsibility. Even they are not responsible to have crops in Amazonia, the economic sector politically will assume the defense of Amazonia, and also will assume an international campaign, a commitment to fight against hunger. 1% of the, for example, international funds for 1% for international trade from Brazilian agriculture will be fully dedicated to end hunger in the world. This is something that means really corporate citizenship, okay? It's not only commitments to go to Davos or to other, it's come back to a country and go to the region where you have the rich ones, because agriculture is so powerful in my country, in our country, sorry, but how indeed you address solutions for people that live there, and how you share these with other ones. These are concrete ways that will become two important political outcomes. You have a green global south, push, absolutely well designed, based on economy and also partners in technology, and with a positive social impact. And you can have partnerships, for example, in Argentina, and a partnership between Brazil and Argentina, two important soy producers in the world. Come on, how we can do this? Okay, and another thing that I also think is very important is that we can show that you can believe that this makes sense for us. Okay, it's not something fake or greenwashing, because you have the diversity of people, the beneficiaries of this, that will be in charge, okay, to monitor and to say what's right, what's wrong, what we need to improve. And this means a new way to express politics, because you have a political constituency on the climate change governance, okay, umbrella based on land use and land use players, and not only based on energy players. And this means that probably we'll be able to end deforestation in the world, illegal deforestation, and bring protection and production together in an innovative way to value political assets or political constituents like agricultural sector. This dispute that we have today doesn't make sense in my opinion. Okay, I know that they have interest. I'm not a naive woman, but come on, the interest in the center, they must be other ones. I'm so sorry, but it's too old to have the dispute that like European countries versus Mercosur. Come on, let's discuss in concrete ways what the real interests and make sure that we can share goods and we can have international markets as an asset, as a solution for us. I'm not against international markets, not this, but what I'm saying is that we need to put the focus on the right things. And for this, we need new political constituents in not discussing what we have been done in the last 40 years. My interest, what we will be able to do in the next 40 years. This is what really is interest, what really make the difference, okay? And if you want to have our diplomacy back, our important, sophisticated diplomacy, and come on, we need to bring assets, okay? To have credibility, we need to deliver positive things, okay? And if you're not able to deliver positive things, we need to bring people to support you, okay? In such a way that you can find solutions. Today, unfortunately, what we have in Brazil is to find problems. My last recommendation, please, problems is something that psychology, judge, and policemen used to like. Okay, I prefer actions, solution. Okay, and so I think that we need to mobilize people by the positive polo, not with the negative one. Meaning after COVID, COVID is a scarf. Okay, a scar that you have in our humankind the next year. Come on, okay? People really don't understand yet what it means. And this means vulnerabilities and risks. And this is the first step of, if you're not able to manage climate change, that the first step of different crises that you probably need to face in the future if you're not able to play now, consider climate change. And so my feeling is that we need to bring some economic players with concrete responsibilities and also visibility, and allow the guys or provoke the guys to develop a new political economic narrative and be responsible for. I'm completely tired, okay, to see and to listen to the old speeches that we are the best. We are not the best. If we are the best, the world probably you didn't have the world that we have today. We need to become the best. And this is the big challenge that we have today. But I think that your generation really understand this very well. And I think that we don't need to wait for the young people for the next year. We need to bring young people now to be part of the decisions, because your generation is responsible for the mobilization, the political mobilization around the world. And this is serious, this is real, okay? Greta and other ones, the parents of the future, other movements, global movements that's around the world, this is not something that we need to put aside, okay? This is critical. This means that we need not to change, we need to act together. So my feeling is that in a concrete way, I will bring in Brazil agriculture under the umbrella, climate change umbrella, and say, okay, guys, you are the best one, give to us the good answers. And let's see if we're able to do this. Consider the next 40 years, not the past 40 years. So, and the science together, always the scientists, don't forget it, okay? Don't forget it. And COVID showed this to us also. So it's absolutely important that we can do this. It's time to Brazil to open the Pandora box, okay? And I hope that we can open the green Pandora box.
So I'd like to finalize this webinar. Thank you so much, Minister Izabella, for our time in this meaningful and impactful discussion, so important for our times. I think we have a lot of food for thoughts here among us today. And for our audience, please stay tuned for the next Lessons from Esplanada webinar series. We'll be reaching out through our social medias. And once again, thank you so much, Minister Izabella. Thank you, Pedro. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. And I hope that Join us. Okay, let's go. Let's do a better country and a better world. I'm fully convinced that I have time to do this. And I think that somebody asked me if I am Candanga. I was born in Brasilia in the first generation with President Juscelino Kubitschek, and I'm very proud to be a Brazilian. And I'm sure that Brazil and Brazilian society, we are not pariah international. We are more than what happened to what is showing today concerning Brazil. Okay, thank you very much. I hope that will join us and let's build a better country and a better world. You can do this, believe in me. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you
See you soon, I hope
much.
so. Thank you, Pedro. Muito obrigada. Thank you very much.
See
Okay?
you, thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.